Hey everyone, and welcome to Hooked on Needles and Crafts. Today we're going to be doing another itty bitty knit kit that I got from Five Below. For my returning subscribers, thank you so much for tuning in, and for my new viewers, please consider subscribing, share, hit that like button, leave a comment below, and click on that notification bell for future videos. So today, you guys, we are doing Speedy Nail. This is a viewer request. If you have a request, leave a comment below. If you don't want to wait for me to find the kit, you can always email me the instructions. My information is on my channel. And if you need priority over your requests, then go ahead and check out the memberships. If you click on join, you're not going to automatically join. It just takes you to the 2 option levels that I have, and each level has a bit of benefits for you that I think would help you if you're learning how to do knitting or crocheting. But yeah, so let's get this started. Let's unbox this. Okay, comes with the instructional booklet. I like this booklet. There's illustrations as well as text, and if this video does not help you, that's okay. Everyone has their different way of learning. You can use the booklet, either the illustrations or the text, or you can also check their website for their own videos. I think they're generic, but I haven't checked, so let me know. But you can go on there and watch their videos as well. What I also like about this booklet is that there's a built-in ruler, so you don't have to go and get your own ruler. Due to copyright reasons, I cannot share anything inside of this booklet. If you really want to make Speedy Snail, go ahead to your local Five Below or online and you can get this kit. I actually could not find this kit, so I went on their website finally and saw that they had it to ship, so I went and got it to ship. So there's different ways that you can go get these kits. And then when I went to pick it up at the store, they had I don't know how many boxes of it along with the other itty bitty knit kits, so how about that? But anyway, inside this pouch here is all the accessories you're gonna need to make this Speedy Snail. You have your knitting needles, you have your stuffing and felt sticker, we have a pipe cleaner and sewing needle. So that this doesn't get dirty, I'm going to put this back into the little pouch here until we need it. That goes for the felt sticker as well, and the pipe cleaner. And then so that I don't lose it, I'm going to stick the sewing needle right in there as well, and then set this aside until we need it towards the end. Now also in this packet, or this, it's not really a box, we have all these different color yarns. How pretty is that? So this is going to be a little fun, I guess. I'm going to be clearly showing you how to transition in color, which is a little advanced, so we'll see how that goes. Let's set this aside for now. Okay, and then let's take a look at what we're supposed to be doing today. So for our Speedy Snail, we are doing 1 rectangle, which is great. We only have to do 1. The only problem is we have to transition colors, so that is going to be the kicker, because you know, well, that's a little tough. Alright, so in the illustration it shows you how many stitches you need and then what size the rectangle is supposed to be in inches. That's why you're provided the ruler. Then off to the side it tells you how many rows that you need to make. Listen, we've had this discussion in every video. I don't trust the number of rows that they ask you to make because sometimes they're really off. In this case, because we are changing colors, I don't want to even figure out, you know, you can do the math and divide the colors on your own, but I'm just going to follow the rows and see what happens. You know, if I do all the rows and I don't in my rectangle doesn't make that measurement in inches, I'm just gonna add on, you know, in this case, more pink. If I run out of pink, I'm gonna add other colors, because I just don't understand what's happening here. They must have like the most loose knitting people making these instructions, because every time I follow the rows, it's not big enough. But anyway, comment below if you have that same problem. But I'm going to go ahead and we're going to take the pink yarn, and we have to measure a tail. The tail is going to be used to sew all the pieces together. We did, what did we do? We did the lollipop, and it's a similar situation because we did change colors. But what I ended up doing there is, because I wanted to sew the same color, I left a tail long enough to sew that color. I'll explain when we get there, but yeah, so I'm just gonna go measure out the tail right now. Alright, off camera, because I need to use the instructional booklet. So the first line tells you how long the tail is supposed to be. So go ahead and do that now. Okay. And then you want to hold a pinch of where that measurement is. So, for example, here is the amount of tail that was asked to measure out. Okay. Where I'm pinching is the point of the tail. So we're keeping that measurement. We're going to use this to sew the piece at the end. So we'll set this aside. You want that down and out of the way. Meanwhile, your feeder yarn, you want to keep it up and out of the way. But what we're going to do, so hold on this tightly. We're going to take our middle and ring finger and hold the yarn out like this. We're going to do a slip knot. So then you're going to take your two fingers and we're going to push up, and you're going to turn down to create this huge loop. Then we're going to take our middle finger and index finger, grab the feeder yarn and pull it through the loop, creating a huge knot. And then all we have to do from here is tighten up the knot. So tighten it up. You want to make sure or try to have the knot close to your thumb, your left thumb. So however you need to do that, just tighten up the knot. This is going to minimize the amount of waste of yarn, because we don't know if they'll give you enough yarn. So once you pushed it down to where it needs to be, alright, you can go ahead and pull on the tail just to tighten up this knot just a little bit more. You don't have to pull it too tight. Now, from the knot to the thumb, this is how much yarn I've wasted. That's not bad. So what you don't want is to have your knot all the way out here and you wasted all of this yarn, because you already measured enough tail. So you really don't need any more yarn than that. So this is not bad. When you get better at it, it ends up getting really close to your thumb and you waste zero amount of yarn. Okay. So now we have this huge loop, but we need to make this smaller so that we can use it with our knitting needles. So what you want to do is hold the knot, and then we're going to take the feeder yarn and we're just going to pull it until that loop is small enough to fit 2 knitting needles. Okay, so slip those knitting needles in. You can tighten it or loosen it as you need. I'm going to just tighten this a little bit. And then we're ready to start casting on stitches. So in the illustration, as well as the text, it tells you the number of stitches that you're going to need. So in this project, we are working with knit stitches, and to cast on stitches, it just so happens that you do that using the knit stitch. So gather up some feeder yarn. Okay. Now, you want to get into your knit stitch position. That's Xing your needles. Your right needle is going to be on the bottom and your left needle is going to be on top, like this. Okay, you want your tail to be down and out of the way. You want your feeder yarn to be up and out of the way. You always want to maintain contact with your needle. So if I look at the top view, you can see that there's a very small piece of needle touching each other. You want to do that at all times because that's going to prevent you from losing any stitches or any yarn overs. So hold your needle in an X. We're going to take our feeder yarn and we're going to wrap it around our right needle from back to forward, and then we're going to drag it down. Because we are maintaining contact with our needles, you might feel or hear it snap. Okay, you want to get that into that little crevice there created by clenching your needles together. But now the next move is to slide our left needle down our right needle over the point and down the back, forcing the feeder yarn through this loop, creating a new stitch. So slide your left needle down the right, over the tip, and down the back. Okay, hold on. You might have to do this more than once. All right, we're gonna slide it down the right, over the point, down the back. Just keep doing that until it's forced through, because sometimes the needle is so slippery that the yarn doesn't catch as easy. But we've created a new stitch, and what we're going to do is transfer the new stitch over to the left needle because we're casting on stitches onto the left needle. So take your left needle, poke it through that new stitch, and lift it off the right needle entirely, and now it's on the left needle. All right, let's do this again. Stick your right needle into the new stitch now. Get into your knit stitch position, which is an X. Right needle on the bottom, left needle on top, feeder yarn up and away, and you want your tail yarn to be down and away, and you want to maintain contact with your needles. All right, so we're going to wrap the feeder yarn around the right needle from back to forward, and then we're going to pull it down. You might hear or feel it snap because the needles are touching. Get it into that crevice. Then we're going to take our left needle, slide it down our right needle over the point and down the back, forcing the feeder yarn through the loop, creating a new stitch on the right. So now we just have to transfer that over to the left. So take your left needle, poke through that new stitch, and lift it off completely off the right needle, adding a new stitch to your left. So let's do this one more time, you guys. Stick your right needle into the new stitch, get into your knit stitch position, which is an X. Right needle on the bottom, left needle on top, tail down and away, feeder yarn up and back. So we're going to wrap our feeder yarn around the right needle from back to forward. So maintaining contact, we're going to pull down. You might feel or hear it snap. Get it into that crevice. Then we're going to slide our left needle down the right needle, over the tip and down the back, creating a new stitch on the right needle. And then we just have to transfer that over to the left. So take your left needle, poke through that new stitch, and remove it off the right needle altogether. So now you have 4 stitches on your needle. So now that I've shown you how to do this 3 times step by step, you can rewind this video as many times as you need until you're comfortable doing casting on stitches on your own. By the way, if you need to speed up or slow down the video, click on the gear button in the corner. There's playback options to go fast or slow. If you don't need to hear me talk, you can lower the volume on your device and click on the CC closed caption button. But I've now added chapters to my videos from here on out, So you can go ahead and click in the description box. There's timestamp sections, and whatever section you need, you just click on the timestamp and it'll take you directly to that section. But I'm going to go ahead now and finish the rest of this row. We're going to come back in. I'm going to show you what to do next. Alright, once you finish casting on your stitches, a good rule of thumb is to always count your stitches to make sure you have the right number of stitches after each row. So I'm just going to count off my stitches here, off to the side. Alright, and then we're going to be able to do the next steps. I dropped something, I'll pick it up later. Okay. So what we're going to do next is, let's first check our stitches. You want to make sure that everything is in a straight line. So you want your project to grow downward this way. So just make sure that it's always in a straight line. And we'll explain more about that after the next row. So for the next row, we're now going to do full-on knit stitches. What we just did was casting on stitches, which happened to be kind of like knit stitchy, but now we're doing the full knit stitch. There's not much difference between the two, except instead of transferring over the new stitch to the left needle, we're going to keep it on the right needle. So the number of stitches that you have on your left needle, you should have the same number of stitches left on your right needle. Okay. So as we add a stitch here, we're going to remove a stitch here. Add a stitch here, remove a stitch here. So let's do the first one. Stick your needle into the first stitch here. Get into your knit stitch position. Okay, we're going to wrap around the feeder yarn like we did before. Bring it down. You're going to feel it here it snap. Then we're going to create our first stitch. Now, we've created our first stitch on the right needle, which means we're going to lose a stitch on the left needle. So we're just going to lose the one we just used. So carefully creep up your stitches on the left needle, just enough so that you can flick off that one stitch off the left needle. So we've gained a stitch here, we've lost a stitch here. Let's do another one. Stick your needle on the next top stitch, get into your knit stitch position. We're going to wrap around our feeder yarn like we've been doing and bring it down. You're going to feel it here it snap. Then we're going to slide our needle down and back like we have been doing, creating a new stitch. But instead of transferring, we gained one stitch here, we're going to lose one stitch here. So carefully creep up your stitches and flick off that stitch. So now we have +2 on the right, -2 on the left. Let's do this one more time with you guys. So stick your needle into the next top stitch. We're going to wrap around the right needle like we've been doing and down. You might feel or hear it snap. Then we're going to slide our left needle down the right, creating a new stitch. Now we gained a stitch on the right, we're going to lose a stitch on the left. So creep up your stitches carefully, just enough to go and flick this stitch off your left needle. So now you have 3 stitches on the right, we have -3 stitches on the left, and again the total is going to be the same number of stitches you started with. So now that I've shown you how to do the knit stitch at least 3 times step by step, you can go ahead and rewind this video as many times as you need until you're comfortable doing knit stitches on your own. But I'm going to go ahead and continue the rest of the knit stitches down the row, and then I'm going to show you what to do next.
Alright, once you finish casting on your stitches, you want to make sure that everything is in a straight line. So you want to make sure that everything is in a straight line. So what we're going to do next is, let's first check our stitches. So you want to make sure that everything is in a straight line. So you want to go ahead and, let's first check our stitches.
Alright, so I've used up all the stitches on my left needle, and now all my stitches, which is the same stitch count, is on my right needle. To do a row as a righty, you always have to have stitches on your left. But since there's none, what do? Well, all we have to do is swap our needles. So take your left needle, move it over to your right, and then take your right needle, hold it by the tip, and flip it over to your left like that. See, it's right here. Flip it over like that. And I show you to do it this way because this is going to prevent your feeder yarn from being in the wrong spot. So if your feeder yarn and your relaxed is down and back, when we flip our project to our left, your feeder yarn is still kind of down and back. So you just have to hold this here and this here, and you're good to go. Now, before you start every row though, I said that you should make sure that your stitches are in a straight line. So it's going to be wonky now because there's more than one layer, but all you have to do is just make sure that the stitches across here are nice and straight, or straight as possible. And then your project goes down. This is going to prevent your project from twisting and turning. If you don't do that, then I've done it a few times. It's crazy, but if you leave the spiral, you can accidentally knit and keep that spiral, and then you have to undo everything. But yeah, so another reason why you want to keep this straight, and I have a short on it if you want to see that, but you can accidentally increase a stitch. So I'm just going to cover all these other ones for now, and let's just focus on this one here, because this one is always going to be loose. As you knit, it's going to tighten up on its own, but right now it's probably the loosest thing, and the stitch below it is all nice and stretched. That's just what happens. Now, the problem is, if you have your feeder yarn down and back, that's okay, because your tail yarn is relaxed, chilling. The stitch here is nice and, you know, doing its thing. However, if you turn your project, or you're not paying attention really, and this is something that you wouldn't know as a beginner, which is why I'm explaining it now, is if you take your feeder yarn and watch this, I'm going to magically turn this one stitch into two, but if you had your feeder yarn up and back, that one stitch will end up looking like two stitches. And that's where I think the comments that I get, that's where I think you're getting your extra stitches. Because, and I've done this as a beginner myself, and then your project will start growing outward, and then you're going to have all these stitches, you're not going to know why. So this is probably why, because I can easily knit into this stitch, knit into that stitch, thinking that it's two, but in reality it's one. So if I pull my yarn back up and back, you see how it like kind of automatically wants to curl upward? So your tail yarn now is not relaxed. It's kind of wanting to follow it up because we're pulling our feeder yarn up and back. Now on top of that, looking on it head on, you can see that your stitches here are straight, but then it kind of does something like this. It kind of bows upward. And then when you look at it from the bottom side, okay, you can see that there's the line of stitches, and then it kind of also creeps upward. And again, your tail yarn has a little ponytail hump going on. It should be lying flat, and it's not flat. So what you want to do, like I said, you want to just make sure that all your stitches, even if you have to tug it a little bit, that your stitches are lined up. Okay, and then this double stitch is now going to go back to one. See, it's bringing the feeder yarn back down. We're going to pull that feeder yarn down and back like it's supposed to, and alas, this stitch here is curling up, so you just got to make sure you pull it down. Alright, so now we have all our stitches from the previous round all in a row. Alright, so now that we went over that, we can continue on to the next row. The next row is pretty much going to be knit stitches like we've been doing. So I've shown you how to do that 3 times step by step. So I'm going to move on to a somewhat moderate pace so that you can at least see what it looks like once you get the flow. And then after that, I'll probably go into silence until and go my normal speed until we transition to another color. So for now, I'm just going to do my knit stitches all the way down the row. Alright, so now that I've completed this row, we just have to switch our needles again and then straighten out our project so that it's growing straight down. Again, this last stitch is always going to be loose. Now, again, I'm going to work the rest of this pink until I complete the number of rows. So this video, I'm going to follow the number of rows and hope for the best. You can go ahead and do that as well if you want to be a little bit more accurate with the rectangle length. You can figure out what you want to do to evenly divide up the rows. But yeah, I'm just going to do what it says, and then if I need it to make it longer, I'm just going to grow it longer with whatever color I have. Alright, so let's do this in silence, and I will come back when we're transitioning to the next color. Alright, so I finished the number of rows that they asked to do for this section here. We're now going to transition to the yellow yarn. So let's take this apart here. We're going to have a nice hot mess in a minute. The pink yarn is all tangled over there. But anyway, so what we're going to do is, okay, we have this color to sew here. So we're going to end up cutting about 1 inch or so on here and tie it together to the yellow. Now, what I could do is use a bit of tail. I'm just going to go back and forth twice to give myself some length. That way I'm not wasting too much yarn. But this is what I'm going to use to sew this section. Again, there's going to be stripes of different colors. And just so that we're not using the pink all the way through, you can see the pink coming through the different colors and it doesn't look that neat. I recommend giving yourself some tail when you change colors so that you can use this to sew the folds together. So pinch it right where I did my double pass. I don't know if it's going to be enough. I'm hoping that it will be because I don't want to waste too much yarn. And then I'm going to do what we did before with the slip knot. Take your middle and ring finger and hold a bit apart. Then you're going to take 2 fingers and we're going to push up and turn down to create this large loop. Then I'm going to take my ring finger and index and pull the feeder yarn through the loop, creating a huge knot right there. So now all we have to do is tighten up the knot. So tighten it up, and again, try to tighten it up close to your thumb. You want to minimize the amount of yarn that you're gonna waste. So the closer to the thumb, the better. So just keep tightening that knot until you can't tighten it anymore. This one was better than the last. It's right next to my thumb. So from here, we're gonna take the tail and pull that just a little bit, not too hard, just to make that knot nice and snug. Then hold the knot. We have this huge loop to work with. You're going to take your feeder yarn and pull that so that this loop is small enough to fit your knitting needle. Okay. And then we're going to set this aside for now. Pick up your project. Slip your needle on the first stitch here. Get into your knit stitch position. I don't even know why I grabbed that actually. Maybe for the tension. But what we're going to do now is we're going to use the yellow as if we did the wraparound. Normally we would wrap around the feeder yarn around the right needle. So this slip knot here is going to act as that. So you can collect your feeder yarn here. This is the tail. Try to get that out of the way. But we're going to create our stitch like we normally would, and you want to maintain contact with your needles so that you don't lose your little slip knot there. So let's create our new stitch, and out comes the yellow. Now I'm just going to flip this backwards because I'm going to go ahead and cut about 1 inch or so of the pink yarn. Actually, I don't know what color that is. It's like coral, peach. Okay, so we're going to give this a cut. And then we're going to tie this piece. Let's tie it to the tail. Don't tie it too tight because there's still a little stitch here that you don't want to make super tight. It's going to look weird. So I say just double or triple knot it, but don't pull as tightly. You just want to secure a knot so that it doesn't unravel. Okay, and then we can just pick up this project and continue as is. And don't worry, we'll be able to hide this when we sew it together. So let's make sure the tail is out of the way, that you're grabbing the feeder yarn only, and we're going to continue doing this row. So let me just talk a bit about what we're looking at here. So I did the number of rows, and the tail is on the left side, and I just changed colors. So for every color actually after this, you have to make sure that your tail is on the left side. If you just did what I did and your tail is on this side, you're gonna have some stripey action happening, and that's not what you want. And I'll show you what that is after I do a few more rows. So let's just complete a row right now with the yellow. Okay, I'm just gonna go about it my pace. But changing colors is, you know, a little complicated at first, but once you've picked it up, it's fairly easy for any time you have to change colors in the future. Okay, so we completed one row of the yellow. Look how it's just the peach or coral. Let's just call this coral. And what are they calling it? They're just calling it pink. We'll just call this pink. Okay, there's a line of pink, and then now we have yellow stitches. All right, we're gonna turn this over and do the next row. But I want to complete this row, and then we'll talk about the stripiness after. So let's do that. All right. So again, we're on the right side, or correct side, with the tail on the left. You can see that very distinct transition between the pink and then the yellow. Now if we flip it back to the wrong side, you can see that we have some stripy action happening. We have a strip of yellow, we have the strip of pink, and then you're going to see yellow again because these are yellow stitches. So every time you transition to a different color on the wrong side, you're going to always see this stripiness. There's going to be the stripe of the new color, stripe of the old color, before it transitions to the color that you're transitioning to. On the right side, you don't see that. You just see one color and then another. So that's why I say when you transition to the next color, make sure your tail is on this side. If it's on this side and you change colors, then you're going to have that stripiness show up on the right side. And so it's going to mess up your whole look here. So now that we know that, I'm going to go ahead and complete the rest of these rows that they're asking to do. And then I'm going to pop back in one more time to show you how to transition to the next color so that I make sure you know which side the tail needs to be on so that we don't get any stripies. We get a nice transition into the next color. But for now, I'm going to do this in silence. As soon as I, get some yarn here. Okay. All right. In silence. All right, so I finished the yellow section. Now we're going to transition to this green. Again, I want to make sure that I have enough yarn to sew the green section together. So I'm just going to go back and forth twice, pinch it right where that is, and then we're going to hold apart the yarn. I'm going to push up the yarn and then turn it down. And then I'm going to grab the feeder yarn through the loop, creating a huge knot. And then I'm just going to tighten it up. Try to make it close to my left thumb as possible. And then I'm going to pull on the tail that I gave myself to tighten up the knot just a little bit more. Don't pull too tight. Then I'm going to grip the knot and we're going to make this loop smaller enough to fit our knitting needle. Okay, then I'm going to set this aside. I'm going to take my needle here and get into my knit stitch position, slip on the green, and that's going to act as our yarn over. Okay, then I'm going to create that new stitch like that. Then I'm going to lay this down. We're going to cut now the yellow feeder yarn about 1 inch or so because we're not going to use this for now. And I'm going to double or triple knot it to the tail of the green so that I can secure the colors together. You don't want to pull too tightly because the yellow does belong to a current stitch, and you don't want to make that stitch too tight because then knitting might be an issue. You might not be able to put your needles in the stitches comfortably, but this is going to be used to sew the green section together. Turn this right side up, and again, the tail is on the left. And as I do the rest in silence, you're going to see the clean transition between colors, because we've got to change to the teal. I don't even know what colors they're calling this. Blue, I guess they're calling it blue. And then we're going to go back to yellow and back to pink. Again, I'm following the row count that they have. So you're going to see nice clean transitions on the right side, and then on the wrong side you're going to have little stripies. Okay, so I'm going to pop in when I reach the end of all the color sections. I'm going to measure that against the ruler. If it's not long enough, again, I'm going to add extra rows with whatever colors I have left. And then I'll come back in and we will do a cast off, and I'll show you how to do that. All right, so the last color transition is the pink. I did take a moment to measure what this is right now, and it's actually like about a little more than half way through the length it's supposed to be. See, so like I said, it's so frustrating to follow their row count to not have the right size it's supposed to be. So what I'm going to do, and this is me, your stitches could be a different size, but for my measurement, I am just going to repeat this band before I do the pink. So I'm going to repeat I'm going to repeat the blue on this side, then the green, then the yellow, then the pink. And that should be the length that it's supposed to be. That's how far off it is. So in silence, I'm just again going to repeat the blue, the green, and the yellow before I go to the pink. And then when we come back, I'm going to show you how to fasten off. Alright, so it is now the length that it needs to be. And just then I was doing the last row of the pink, but the cast off row is the last row, so according to the instructions. So let's teach you how to cast off. So in order to cast off, you have to have 2 stitches on your right needle. So I'm going to go ahead and knit 2 stitches. Okay, and this is pretty universal whenever you knit in any project that wants you to cast off. But we're going to take this left needle here and put it into this bottom stitch. We're going to leapfrog it over the next and then pull it off of the right needle and off the left needle. So take your left needle, poke it through this bottom stitch, leapfrog it over the next one. You can take your thumb and hold back that stitch so you don't lose it, but we're going to remove this one off the right needle, and then we're going to remove it off the left needle. So you should have 1 stitch left on your right needle. And because we always have to have 2 stitches to cast off on the right needle, we're going to knit another stitch. So knit another stitch, and then we're back to square one. So take your left needle, put it through this bottom stitch here. We're going to leapfrog it over the next. You can take your thumb and hold that stitch back because we're going to pull this stitch off the right needle and then off the left needle, and we're left with 1 stitch again. Okay, so one more time with you guys. Let's knit a stitch. We're going to take our left needle and poke it through this bottom stitch here. We're going to leapfrog it over the next. Hold that stitch back with your thumb, and then we're going to slip this stitch off the right needle and off the left needle. So you're left with 1 again. So now that I've shown you how to cast off at least 3 times step by step, you can go ahead and rewind this video as many times as you need until you're comfortable doing the cast off on your own. Meanwhile, I'm just going to finish the rest of the stitches on the left needle, and then I'll come back in and show you what to do with the last one at the end. Alright, so when you go through all the stitches off your left needle, you will end up having 1 more stitch left on your right. So in order to deal with that, what we're going to do is I'm going to cut this pink yarn. I'm going to give about 1 inch or so, and then we're going to wrap this around the right needle. Okay, you can hold this back with your index and middle finger, but this is going to act as another stitch. So we're going to do the same thing. You're going to take your left needle, stick that through the bottom stitch. We're going to leapfrog it over this yarn over. You can hold, use your thumb to hold it back so you don't lose it. But I'm going to take that stitch and remove it off the right needle and then off the left needle. And then I'm going to take the right needle and just pull that out until all that yarn is through the loop completely. And then I'm going to hold it at the base here, and we're going to pull on this excess piece to tighten up that loop to turn into a knot. Okay, so now you have finished the other end. Alright, so let's talk about the assembly. For this, we're going to grab our sewing needle from our little pouch, and we're basically just going to fold this in half. The snail has two round edges on each end. So here's one, and then here's two. We're gonna do a full round edge on here. So let's start this way. No, let's start this way. So remember how I gave myself some yarn for each color section? Now I'm able to use this and sew the round edge, and then I can move on to the next color. But I'm going to use some straight stitches. I'm not a sewer, so if you have your own way of making this nice, then by all means. Ooh, yeah, make sure that the right side is facing out before I do that. You can tell what's the right side because we have the nice transition of colors. You don't want all the frillies and excess pieces and the stripies to show on the wrong side, unless you, I mean on the right side, unless you like that sort of thing, but I don't. And then while we're here, you can also tuck in those extra pieces to hide it, so they won't show. But anyway, I'm going to sew up this edge, and when I get to the corner, I'm just going to round it off. Did this say? Oh, prettier side of your knitting is inside. Sorry. They want you to flip this inside out? No. Alright, that's just a nightmare. Are you kidding me? Alright, it's telling you to flip this inside out, but how difficult is that going to be? So that's simple. We're just going to remove these stitches I made. Sorry about that. But it's insane if they're going to make you... It's so long. I'm going to tear these stitches up just trying to flip it inside out. Alright, but let's just do what they tell you to do. Because the lollipop that I did, they didn't have you do the prettier side on the inside. I wonder what makes the difference of them telling you to switch it. I don't see much difference between the two. It's both tubular pieces that are very long. Okay, anyway. So again, we're at this corner and we're going to round it off. Oh, I know why. Well, no, that still doesn't make any sense, but I guess because the ends are rounded and you want to hide these corners. I get it, but I think for the lollipop it didn't really matter. But anyway, alright, this is actually just enough to round off the ends. So once you've gotten to that side, you can now find a moment to tie your knot. So I'm just going to do that right now. Okay. Alright, you don't have to worry about tucking that in because we're going to flip it inside out, but I'm just going to move down the line now. I'm going to take each color, and as you see, some of this, I mean, this is going to be more than enough to sew the section, so we're good on that. And then in this case now, just make sure that all those excess pieces are on the outside so that when we flip it inside out, they're all hidden away inside. And then since we actually have the little excess ends on each end, we can use that to tie a knot. So that's convenient. Okay. So let me actually just go through this in silence, and then we're going to leave a gap here in the pink so that we can flip it inside out. But I am, well, let's see, according to this, let's leave a gap between the yellow and half the pink so that we can do the rounded edge, and leave this gap for us to flip inside out and then put the stuffing in. But I'm going to do this in silence. Alright, so I've sewn from here all the way down to here. I did leave the gap that it was asking for. I still have the needle attached to the pink, and then we still have the yellow left out here. So now we just have to flip this inside out. So this is what I'm talking about, that it's going to be a little difficult. I'm just going to slide this onto my index and middle finger. Then I'm going to grab this end with my index and middle finger and just pull it inside out. So that's one way, and then I'm going to go on this side, do the same thing, and flip it out inside out. So now we have all the colors looking pretty nice and pretty clean. The ends are rounded. We have this bit left. Okay, so let's stuff. It says we have to stuff first. So grab the stuffing out of your packet. I might as well pull out the felt sticker and the pipe cleaner as well. Now for this, it comes in a clump. I want you to rip it off little piece by piece, because this is going to help you to control the stuffing. If you put it all at once, it's going to be very hard for you to manipulate that. But I'm going to grab a little piece and push it all the way down into the end. And make sure that is in there. You want to make sure it's nice and filled out, because one of the ends is going to become the head. And you want it to be nice and filled. So just keep doing this. I don't know how we are on video time. I'm hoping that this is going to be under 2 hours. So let's see. I do recommend that if you do make future snails or future kits from Five Below, or any other kit really, I would go ahead and get a bag of this stuffing. You can find it online or at your hobby store. It looks like this is barely making it. Alright, so I'm going to put this in the other end. Barely made it. Alright, and then now we're going to close this up. So remove this pink. I think I'm going to put the head this way because I have all this yarn here. I want to try to save that. So let's do the yellow first. The quality of yarn is so bad, you can easily split the yarn. It's kind of annoying. Okay, so we're going to sew this yellow part together. Try not to sew into the stuffing because it will rip into outward of your project, and then it's really hard to fix. It's just going to look like a fuzzy mess. So try to avoid the stuffing at all costs. This sewing needle is not smooth. It's gonna easily rip through that stuffing and tear it out. Alright. Once we've reached that end, I'm gonna tie my knot. So go in here. And let's tie our knot. Okay, once that is knotted, you're going to go through this end here next to that excess piece. We're going to snake this down, come out through any part of the snail, because we're just going to drag that excess piece in there and pull it all the way out. If you're lucky, it stays in there. If not, you can cut that flush to the surface. Okay, then we're going to go back to this pink. I'm going to close this off and I'm going to create the head at the same time. Well, actually, no. I'm going to save the head at the end because I'm gonna create the snail portion, and the head is gonna be on the other end. So let's close this up. And I think this yarn will be enough to do all of that. Okay, so we've sewn closed the pink, and now we have to start curving it. So you want to stitch it where the seam line is, so we can hide that. So I'm actually going to fish this all the way up to the end so that we can start there. Okay, we're going to curl this in. You're going to put your pink through a group of the stitches here, and this is going to start curling. Okay, then I'm going to kind of anchor this stitch. Again, I'm not a sewer, I'm just trying to figure out my own way to get this to stay, and then we're going to keep rolling with this. I'm going to, let's see, go up here at the end. Let's go through here, and then when we turn it, we're going to hit another point that we're going to go through the seam line and pull, and then anchor our stitch there. Okay, then I'm going to put my needle through the end again, and we're going to turn it some more. We're going to go through the seam, anchor your stitch, and then we're going to go through a little bit of the row here. So let me see. Okay, we're going to keep going. Go through the seam, anchor your stitch there. So it looks like it's gonna go up, so let us go up through here, and we're pretty much just gonna do this one more time. So let's anchor this onto the yellow, like in the middle of the yellow. Oh, I guess this way. Okay, anchor our stitch here. Now, so now we have to create the head, and they want you to put it around the pink. So I'm actually going to go in here, come up at the pink, and then I'm just going to go around that row between the pink and the yellow, and this is going to be the, look how small it is. Let's try to shift some of this stuffing so that our head is just a little bit more bulbous. We don't want it to have a pea head. Okay, and you can try again, see if doing that really made a difference. I mean, yeah, I don't know. Okay, so that is what it is, but let's see. Alright, so I'm just going to pull this so that there's a definite like pull for this head, and you can clearly see that it's a head. And then I'm going to find my moment to tie a knot. Whoa. So I'm going to try to do it near the back of the neck so I can hide my knot. bit. Let's see. Okay, once you've tied your knot, we're going to hide this excess piece. So go in where it's sticking out, and then you can exit through the other side somewhere, doesn't matter where. Pull it all the way out. If it hides on its own, that's great. If not, you can cut this flush to the surface. Alright, squeeze it to make that disappear. Okay, so now you have your snail. I'm going to try to redirect some of this because this is a little squished. Here, I want to put some stuffing into that section. And again, it gets really hard for you to do that once you're once it's in there, because that's deep. But anyway, all right. So now what we're going to do, they want you to put the stickers on, but let's put the stickers on. So I have my tweezers here because, let me put my glue gun on. I've been doing the glue gun thing because it says you can sew the edges, but some of this felt sticker is so small that you would have to be an expert seam sewer, I don't know, in order to, hold on a sec. Alright, sorry about that. In order to get that to sew around a tiny eye, so let's do the pipe cleaners first. It's kind of perfect because they already bend this for you so you don't poke yourself. I'm just going to tuck in the end to make a little circle. That's going to further protect the ends. I wouldn't give this to a kid. It's just not safe when it involves these pipe cleaners because it is made of metal and they can poke themselves. But yeah, I do that. And then what we're going to do, I'm going to stick this through the head. Okay, go in one side, out the other, and then you can bend it up so that you have your antenna. And then I'm going to wait for this glue gun to heat up, and then we're going to put on the felt stickers. So for now, let me just clean this up. In case you were wondering, this is the yarn that I have left. So it seems like they gave us a good amount of yarn this time. I'm going to tuck this away in case I ever need it. Yep, let's give this glue gun a little bit, and then we'll glue the face together. Alright, so I have my tweezer here because they're small pieces, and I'm using a hot glue gun. So if you have supervision and you're able to use the hot glue gun, you can follow with me. Otherwise, it's just a matter of sticking the stickers onto your project. So that, like, for instance, this smiley face is just so tiny. But I'm going to take that and put this center. Okay. I actually have a low temp hot glue gun, so, and it's a little sliver, so it's not gonna hurt as much as other times. But I wouldn't recommend that. Again, you need supervision for that. So we got our smiley face. Next, we are going to be putting on, why is there a star here? That's interesting. We're going to put on one of the eyes. Oops. Preferably without the backing. Okay, so take some of the glue, put it on the back of this eye, and then plop that on. Okay. Then we're going to take the other eye, get some glue, and then put the other eye on. Try to make it symmetrical and the little shiny bits facing the same direction, otherwise you'll have like oogly eyes. Okay? But that is pretty much it. Let me turn off my glue gun. You always want to make sure that is off and unplugged. Okay, you don't want to burn yourself. You don't want to cause any fires, any melts. This falls flat on something, it can melt it. But here is the end result. It's a little pea head. I tried. But again, that goes to just having, I think with the lollipop, we stuffed as we sewed it up. That's what the instruction had us doing. So, in this case, it had us do it opposite. We had to sew it out, flip it inside out, and then try to feed this through. And this is where I guess I didn't put enough in there, but this is the end result, you guys. Comment below, let me know what you think. Click that like button if you think this Speedy Snail is cute, or click that button if you're looking forward to making one of these yourself at any rate. So thank you so much for watching. This is Hooked on Needles and Crafts. Please share, like, and subscribe for future videos, and I'll see you again next time. Thanks. Bye.